Hello, my lovely people, and welcome to this presentation about overcoming mental blocks and expressing with confidence. This one's designed more so for creatives, those in social media, but generally can be transferable to a broad field. So I hope you enjoy it. If there's any questions, do follow up with them, and I'll do my best to address it. So here we go, overcoming mental blocks and expressing with confidence. So I am Dr. Derek. I'm a psychotherapist, coach, and educator. And for the last 10, 15 years, I've been working with a wide variety of people, helping to overcome mental blocks and aligning more authentically with who you want to become and making sure that fits within your beliefs and values so that you're able to express yourself with confidence. So I'm going to present a little bit of context about myself, as I've started to do already. So I help people reconnect with their voice, their values, and their relational identity. And the special focus with this presentation is around overcoming internal blocks and self-doubt and performance anxiety. Um, the session is about showing up without fear. It's all about understanding the mental blocks that get in the way of being able to express yourself, and learning how to move through those mental blocks. I use my framework that I call the three C's, and it's all about communication, connection, and clarity to help you achieve the goals that you're trying to. So, in this session, we're going to aim at building confidence from the inside out, and that's from your character, not just performance. What I mean by character is our inner substance. It's not our outer style or personality. And the inner character is cultivated over time rather than being inherited or performed. What I mean by that is if you're trying to develop a more sociable sense of self and what you're doing is you're trying harder to be sociable, that's almost a performance versus really believing and aligning that this is how you want to connect with people. So, we're going to look at building confidence through character and clarity. We're going to understand and shift internal blocks. We're going to try and communicate with authenticity and also learn tools to feel safe, seen, and creative. So, this isn't just about becoming perfect, it's about becoming more you and aligned to the version of the you that you want to privilege. So, what I'd like you to do at this point is pause the video if you can and take 5 minutes to list three strengths that support your creative work. And then three things that might hold you back or block you from that. And we'll revisit this towards the end of the presentation. The blocks could be fears, habits, or patterns, for example. Okay. This slide is about how change happens. So, if I was to ask you to name your theory of change, what I mean by that is how do you believe things change? What would you say? Would you be able to answer it, or would you be a bit stuck because it's not something that you've given much thought to? For me, personally, people grow when they experience inner alignment, emotional safety, and the chance to act from their character rather than their fears. So change begins with awareness, it deepens through connection, and becomes sustainable through clarity. Change doesn't happen because we want it. It takes experimentation, it takes time, it takes the right external conditions. And above all, growth is a process, not an outcome. we try and get to that outcome quickly in this day and age. And I think the people that I've worked with that really come far is understanding that growth is a process. There's steps, it takes time, it builds, it's messy, it's hard, but you get to a completely different place if you put in that work. So this next slide I've called the identity flower exercise. So I want you to take 5 to 10 minutes with this one and to draw one of these daisies. Either one is fine. Um, what I'd like you to do is draw one with the different parts of your identity as a person. We've all got different parts of our identity. For example, I'm a son, I'm a father, my culture, my work, therapist, coach, educator, all these different things. Once you've taken some time to go through that, I would like you to then either draw um, another identity flower, or if you'd already started your identity there, to do this on the outside, is to draw the parts of your identity that are related to creativity or your online identity. How you show up publicly, how you think others perceive you, and take 5 to 10 minutes about this to get this done. You can pause now. Okay, hopefully you've done that exercise now and you've come back to it. What I'd like you to do is just take a few minutes to have a look at your identity flower. So, in these petals where you've described things, which parts show up more than other parts? And which parts are quieter than other parts? Is that how you want it to be? What are the reasons that, for example, you as a brother or sister plays less of a role than you as someone who works in an organization or as a business owner? Have a think about these differences. And then what I want you to do from there is then have a think about your creative or social media self and see which ones from your original identity have made it over. Are they by choice? Is it through performance? What are the reasons? The purpose of this exercise is just to generate some thought and awareness of what you're bringing and why you're bringing it, and if you'd like to do anything differently. So hopefully that helps us see how our sense of self shapes and sometimes limits how we create. I sometimes get asked what are some common blocks that prevent people showing up confidently online, and this exercise hopefully presents a version of that where if you are only able to show up in a narrow way, only bringing parts of you, parts of ourself, that could hinder our confidence. So if you're comfortable and have done some work in that and being able to sort of know the other parts of you and you're happy to show those and bring those in, that can really help you show up in a more confident way because it's more aligned with your identity and it's uh, a more authentic version of you. Okay. Blocks are protectors, not problems. So common creative blocks are fear of judgment, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and feeling overwhelmed or having that paralysis, not being able to do anything. So, mental blocks aren't a sign of weakness. They are often protective strategies built from experiences where being able to express yourself hasn't felt safe or hasn't been welcomed. I've mentioned some of the common blocks, and we're going to explore how to work through these in the 3C framework that I mentioned earlier: communication, connection, and clarity. Speak from alignment, not performance. So the first C is communication. So it's not just what we say, but how we speak from within our character. So ask yourself these questions. Am I trying to perform or trying to connect? Am I saying what is true or what I think others want to hear? An example of this is a content creator that I was working with was really exhausted from always trying to be on brand, right? So we worked together over a period of 6 months. We met on a weekly basis and we really reconnected her with her original values: honesty, impact, and creativity. And when she started speaking from that place, she really started enjoying the the creative process again. And because of that, naturally the engagement improved. And it was just getting her to be boundaried around the spaces that she was doing that with, to be more aware and aligned with how she wanted to come across and what she wanted to show. A question I sometimes get asked is about imposter syndrome. So, how do we overcome imposter syndrome? So, from my perspective as a psychotherapist and coach, we start by not proving ourselves, but by returning to ourselves. What I mean by that is imposter syndrome often comes up from a gap between how we feel inside and the version of ourselves that we are supposed to perform. So that tension creates worries, it creates anxiety. So the work isn't about becoming more convincing, it's about becoming more congruent and aligned. So in my practice, I often support people to move away from external comparisons and towards internal alignment. So we explore things like, what do we value? Um, what are you here to express or offer? How can you show up in a way that reflects your character and not your constructed persona, right? And this is where the three C's come in: communication, connection, and clarity. So communication helps you express what's true rather than what's expected. Connection gives you feedback from people who value you for who you are, not who you perform as. And clarity helps you define your purpose, so you're not always swayed by your inner critic or an external voice. You don't overcome imposter syndrome by adding more performance. You overcome it by removing that mask. When you act from your character and your values, confidence begins to grow because not because you're perfect, but because you're aligned. And that's what helps build that confidence. If you do still feel like that's really present and it's really there and you just can't shift it, that's when it's really helpful to spend some time, thinking about it. Obviously, building your confidence is the best way to do it. If you need help and support, or if you want to unpick it more and understand it better, get into some self-help books, talk to your inner circle that you trust, access coaching, access therapy, whatever it is. Try these things to sort of support you in moving forward. So, create resonance, not reach. So this is about connection. So not everyone needs to like your content, and that might be a difficult thing to get. Not everyone needs to like it, but it should feel like you. So who am I speaking to? Who am I speaking with? Even not just who am I speaking to. So who are the people that I'm trying to connect with here? What tone builds trust with those people? An example is where I worked with a creative coach who felt paralyzed making reels. They really just couldn't do it and they just felt too much pressure doing it. So what we did in this situation is we removed the pressure to be perfect and really worked on that for a while. And by removing that pressure, one of the ideas that she had is that she really enjoyed the spontaneous nature of connecting with people. So she started recording while walking, while sharing thoughts, like a voice note to a friend, and talking in that way with her audience and her community. She was really great at that spontaneous sort of way of being and doing and connection. So we made the most of it and it really worked for her. So there's a question here about the fear of visibility. How do we overcome it? So the answer to that for me is connect first, perform second. What I mean by that is when we fear visibility, it's often because we imagine ourselves being watched or judged. It's like standing on a stage in the middle of a spotlight alone. Visibility isn't just about being on display, and I think I just would really want to sort of get that across. That's not what visibility is about. It's about being in a relationship. Instead of trying to impress, focus on engaging. Imagine you, for example, are an inventor and you built really something really cool. If you just walked up to people and say, "Hey, look, this is really cool," it leaves you to be really vulnerable to feeling exposed and unsure about rejection and shame because there's been no connection. It's been cold. It's a cold approach. Whereas instead, if you began by trying to engage some eye contact and seeing if the person would check out what it is that you've got in your hands and saying, I've been working on something I really care about. Can I tell you what inspired it? And that creates that moment of connection. So it invites a conversation and curiosity and a shared meaning. It doesn't mean that it's going to work every time, but that's how I see that sort of cold approach versus connection and sort of community building through relationships. So in practice, what I might mean is asking your audience a question instead of just presenting something as finished. It might mean sharing your why behind the content. It might be feeling like you're speaking to one real person in your mind, rather than a faceless crowd. So when people feel invited in, they don't just respond with clicks, but they respond with care. They engage. And that shift from performing to connecting can turn fear into purpose. And all that connection builds confidence. So clarity also builds confidence. So ask yourself what really matters to me? What are my boundaries and what am I not no longer willing to shrink to fit? So with the third C being clarity, it's about when you know what really matters to you, it's easier to say yes or no to things, to show up or to pause. So when you ask yourself what I stand for, what are my boundaries, what's worth sharing, it really helps in that pursuit and focus of the things that matter to you and parking other things that aren't as important. So confidence for me here isn't about looking perfect, it's about knowing your purpose. So in my work, I've seen where people connect with their values when they create from purpose instead of performance, that their perfectionism begins to soften. The focus moves from how will this be judged to is this true to me? So the invitation isn't to lower your standards, but to redefine them, right? So let your measure of success be, did I communicate with clarity? Did I stay connected to what I care about? Did I show up with integrity? So perfectionism says not yet. Purpose says this is enough because it's real. So some common patterns in creatives, what I often hear is, I freeze when I try and speak, or I feel like I need permission, or I'm scared of being misunderstood. They are relational patterns. They're not flaws. So they're relational wounds. They come from environments that might have taught you that it wasn't safe to be seen. And healing comes from when we create new experiences of being both visible but also safe. And that's why it's really important to align with the person that you want to be, because that safety and that confidence come together in that space. So, what helps long term, right? So, some of the tools that can really help with creating lasting change and ideas that I think that you should sort of build on outside of this space. Number one, boundaries. So you don't burn out trying to please everyone. If you go to my website, www.itsdrderek.com. You can see that I've got a course on boundaries that you can take up, and it really creates a sort of space and focus on privileging what you say yes to and what you say no to so that you can be clear with that. And that doesn't just come from my course. You can think about it yourself. You can access other things and resources and tools online, but it can really help. Reflection, hopefully part of this process, doing the identity flower, thinking about the barriers and the sort of strengths that we've done in the near the beginning. These things help you understand your story. And that awareness is really helpful and part of how we change and adapt and grow. This is part of the process. So the process of growth. Uh, Community. So you're not alone in your growth. It's really important to connect with people, to grow a community, whatever that looks like. And when I say community, doesn't mean that it needs to be loads and loads of people. It can be a small group. And then mentorship. So tracking your growth and so you see yourself clearly with help. Another frequently asked question is about one sort of mindset practice to build resilience. I'm going to touch on that, show you a simple version of it in the next slide. So if you want a daily thing to do, you can try this or just create your own script. Is that one thing that I created, one thing I learned, and one way that I showed up at myself. So that's your script for the day. And by checking in with that, the idea is to be mindful about it and to build the narrative of strength through naming it and sitting with it. Yeah. So one thing I created, one thing I learned, one way I showed up as myself, and it's that self story rooted in growth, not in gaps. So I want you to now again take a couple minutes just to think about what you think supports growth. So one or two lines about what helps you grow personally. What do you need to feel safe enough to change? And what conditions help you to excel, to thrive? So, I grow when. And this comes from the sort of thinking that we did about change earlier on. So, in thinking about these things, the goal is to figure out when you grow, when you build on strengths, when you tackle negatives, when you understand things better, when you try new things, when you come out of your comfort zone. What are the things for you specific to you? So, trust your version, your process is valid, right? Change can happen on different levels, and sometimes it's so when I talk about change, the levels it can happen on. One is a behavioral level. So, for example, you might decide to post more often because everything you see on social media is telling you post more often, post 5 times a day, post 7 times a week, and that's how you grow your audience. So that's a change in what you do, right? And it's often driven by, it's only one example, it's often driven by external pressure or strategy. And that can work. But the deeper change that can be really helpful and more sustainable, it happens at the level of belief or value. So when you shift why you show up and how you relate to your creativity, that's when it can happen. So, for example, you realize I want to share more because I believe that my message really matters and because connecting with people aligns with my purpose. From that shift in how you think about things, it goes beyond the behavioral change and shift. It's something that you actually believe in, it aligns with your values, and therefore you're more likely to try and connect and do that in that way rather than it just being part of a strategy. The outcome might look the same, more posting in both their situations, but the energy behind it is completely different. One's reactive, the other one's rooted, and one leads to burnout, the other leads to authenticity. So go back to your list that we did right at the beginning. What's shifted? What feels possible now? And what would you like to try this week? What feels more possible? So, are there things that you recognized that or related with that you're able to bring in and do something different with? Choose one small creative risk to take this week. A video, a conversation, a new post. It doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be honest. And remember, the more aware you are of your boundaries, the better you can protect them. So do the task with that in mind. So if you're sharing more about yourself, for example, just make sure you're aware of what you're sharing and why you're sharing it and that you're comfortable to do that. Thank you for joining me in this process. Some of my details on here. It's my website and my Instagram. I've also got a YouTube with the same. So I really appreciate you for having a think with me, being open, being reflective, and being brave. I hope this was useful. And if there's any more questions, feel free to contact me. And I've also created a confidence workbook. It's just a sheet of 10, 15 questions. If you think that's useful, give me a follow on Instagram and send me a DM and I'll send that over to you. All the best.